Well, I got 2 slabs of dacite that I need to knap. Now, I measured these before. I think, let's see, one is 3/8 and one is 1/2 inch thick. That's 1/2 inch. Oh, the other one's more than that. Let's see. That's almost 3/4. Okay, so 1/2 inch and 3/4. I don't know if I'll knap both of them, but maybe. It depends on the quality of the stone. 7 and whatever. And 6 and whatever. Okay, so I'm going to start with the smaller one first. Hopefully they're the same type of dacite, so I don't have to readjust and I can just burn through both of them. Hopefully. Okay. Now, dacite is interesting in that it's opaque. It's not translucent except on the very edges or when it's extremely thin. What that means is you can find the flakes easily. And I like that part. That's what makes it interesting. The uninteresting part is it'll step fracture and show your mistakes. So it can be knapped by beginners very easily. Oops, but it won't complement your knapping. It will criticize your knapping. Now this one looks like there was an existing crack because normally doesn't split that way. There's probably an existing crack right there, right in the middle, of course. So let's try the other one. And I always thin the ends first, and it serves 2 purposes. One, it's I think it makes it easier that way, and 2, if it's got a weakness in the middle, it'll show up when you hit the ends, and you don't want to be knapping with a weakness in the middle anyway. That might be a crack right there, a natural crack or a natural seam, but it may also be part of a flake ding. I don't know, let's see. Sometimes if you ding it, it'll cause a crack, you know. Just a hit during shipping or an incidental mishap. So I'm going to test the middle here first on this one. This one looks a little bit darker than this one. It could be me, but yeah, I think this one's darker. Anyway, dacite is usually cheaper than high quality obsidian, so a lot of new guys start on dacite. And I personally knapped a bunch when I started, but I didn't like it that much. And I did knap some dacite slabs, and I like that even less than the dacite nodules. And I say dacite, I think it can also be pronounced dacite, but I say dacite because I've seen some people spell dacite D-A-Y-C-I-T-E. No, it's just D-A-C-I-T-E. There's no word day in the dacite. Okay. So this one, I'm just going to test the edges learning from the first one. I don't know if I could have avoided that crack though. In the first one, I don't know if I could have avoided that. I don't know how deep that crack was. It looks pretty deep, like it was right there. It went to that spot, so I would have to take that edge way back, and I'll only be left with this portion. It's better that it's split there because now I can make 2 points instead of taking all of this off and making only 1 point out of this part, because that's where the crack stopped. You have to remove that. So just imagine removing it with a big old semicircle. What are you going to do with the rest of it? It can only be 1 point. But this was actually fortunate. I could tell it was that long because of the discoloration right here. So that was an internal crack. This crack looks normal, but this one doesn't. Okay, so now I can make 2 points, which is actually more fortunate than taking off this part, like I said. All right, I'm still gonna have to probably test this out, but at least it looks solid, and it's already triangular, so it's good. Now this one I'm going to test the edges first, just because I don't want any sudden surprises. If it's cracked on the edges, it's going to show up, and at least I will have an idea of what to avoid. So we can proceed. I don't see anything major, no issues. Everything looks good. I'm hitting with the flat. It's not perfectly flat, as you can see. It naturally rounds itself somewhat. Okay, it may work better if it's perfectly flat. When I dress it up, I flatten it out, but I don't flatten it perfectly flat. Just so it would be easier for me to adapt. Or if I flatten it out every time, I would have to adapt to the flatness. There is a slight difference in the way it naps when it's perfectly flat than when it's slightly rounded. A very subtle difference, but it is noticeable. When it's slightly rounded, you can actually hit a more particular spot instead of having to isolate it. If it's slightly rounded, it'll hit a particular spot easier than if it was perfectly flat. See, if it's perfectly flat, you might hit different areas. Now usually I do this with indirect percussion on the edges, but as I've stated before, I'm trying to get good at the billet, so that I'll do eventually, I would say, more than 75% of my work with the billet in the future, because I'm seeing a lot of artifacts that look like they were bifaced with billet only or hammerstone only, all the way down to refined bifaces in some cases. It looks like they were using a billet because there's a lot of bold flakes on a lot of these refined bifaces in the archaeological record. And that's much more easily done with a billet than with an indirect percussion flaker, if you get good at the billet, which I think they did, because if this is all I need to bring with me when I go hunting for stone, and I don't need any other tools, that's very efficient. Just a heavy billet, either a thick moose, tine, or a part of the beam, or any other large antlered animal like deer. Elk works too, but elk's antler is pithy, so you need the antler right next to the skull for the elk to be solid and heavy. So large whitetail, I think large whitetails were common everywhere in the US back in the day. I know elk were also, but mule deer and whitetail deer were very, very common. So I would imagine that would be the choice for billets of this type. And I think billets that look like this or resemble this were found with Clovis and other assemblages. Okay. Enough of the technical stuff. Let's just get this trimmed and inspected around the edges. The Dacite seems to be okay with this being really rough and not dressed and smooth. Some of the cherts, they like the smooth surface on the billet. They respond well to it, like the Flint River from Georgia responds well to a rough billet, but a lot of the Texas cherts, they don't respond well to the rough. You got to smooth it down so that you can get more of a slide. The Dacite really doesn't need the slide effect as much, I don't think. Alright, so how do I preserve width and then drive in flakes? Oh gosh, mainly with indirect percussion. Yeah, probably going to switch over, because this is where I would switch over anyway if I was doing just a regular nodule or slab. I mean, nodule or spall. Or spodule. Let's get these other ones by face down too. How's that? Get these two preliminary stages. This one's thicker, so it's a little bit easier. Ouch, that's a lot. Took off a lot on that one. Try not to remove too much. I don't know if that's a crack or not. This Dacite is pretty good quality, actually. It's probably why they slabbed it. Some Dacite has little pockets in it of junk. Or naps a little bit like fused glass, which is very weak. But this one seems okay. Yeah, I gotta watch that I don't take too much off. Yeah, just enough to get it ready for indirect percussion. think I might have goofed that up there. I think I might have goofed this up, or there's a natural crack in there. No, that's a flake. See, there's a crack here on both sides. So that's just an incomplete flake. My mistake. See if you can knock it out. So that we know what we have. Yeah, that's it for that one. It's ready for indirect percussion. Some of these can be napped into quick points. A little bit too thin for my taste though, for something delicate. Even though you can make very thin points from delicate material, I prefer to keep them thick when it's delicate material. And when it's really tough material, you can make a durable, really thin points. But you know, you have that, it's kind of like a paradox, you know. It's hard to thin down a really tough material, but that's the best material for thin points. So how do you manage it? Only with practice. That's it. Effective thinning only comes through practice. There's a certain technique, maybe. You know, I show you how to do indirect percussion. I think indirect percussion is the best technique for thinning, but you have to practice it. I know guys that do a lot of indirect percussion, but they don't make thin points because they don't have enough practice. They can make refined bifaces pretty easily with indirect percussion, but the thinning is what gets them. What are the main problems of thinning that new guys seem to have? The step fracturing. Yeah. The step fracturing and the damage control. They try right away to correct damage, to correct mistakes. As in other crafts, you know, if you make a mistake, that's your first priority. But you can leave them in a little bit. You don't have to correct them all perfectly. Just leave them in sometimes. Like I'm leaving that in right now. I'm just passing it by. I'll deal with it later. And yeah, I'm taking a lot off the edge. But like I said, on these with delicate material, I do like to leave it thicker so it's more durable. And I'll try to thin down the durable stuff more than this delicate stuff. The delicate stuff can stay thick. Yeah. All right, so I got these down to quarry blanks, so to speak. Just imagine them being spalls. I would get them down to that stage and put them in my travel pack or whatever back in the day. Basket or pack basket. The pack basket was very common. Just a basket attached to your back. Easy peasy. Or with a forehead strap. You ever seen those? The strap that goes across your forehead? I need to make one of those to see how I do with that. I have a feeling that would be I would have a very sore neck for a few days, but then I would adapt. I'm assuming. in a few days of walking with that type of pack. And since it was so common back in the day, I would imagine it's more comfortable than having it on your shoulders. Or maybe you have something else on your shoulders. Like you can have straps across one shoulder holding a bag on one side and a strap on the other shoulder holding a bag on the other side. And then you have your forehead strap holding your bag on your back. 3 bags. You can do 3 bags that way. Or 3 baskets. I'm assuming. I need to try it. Instead of having one big backpack, I suppose. Alright, so yeah, these are the cloth is good for flipping those flakes to the side, and the towel is good for that too. I prefer cloth over tarps. I've always preferred that over a plastic coated tarp or whatever they're made out of, nylon tarps. I find it easier to clean up the flakes. All right, so I'll use aluminum because it's easier on the edge than the steel. I started with aluminum billet. I'll go to aluminum indirect percussion flaker. And we'll just go through the motions and get this fully flaked. First step is regularizing it. Right. I could start taking flakes now, but I want to wait till it's a little more narrow. So in the process of regularizing it, it becomes more narrow. The more narrow it is, the easier it is to run flakes into the interior. Although this stuff is very easy to flake, I still want it to be a little more narrow. You can't get away from the physics of the long flakes requiring lots of force. Long flakes always require lots of force. Now you can make them long and narrow. The more narrow they are, the less force required. But how do you get narrow flakes? That's the question. They tend to fan out if you have a very flat surface. So you need a very ridgy surface with existing ridges in it, and not, smooth. You need a lot of ridges to run those long, narrow flakes, which is a skill in itself, to create flake paths on the workpiece in order to run long, narrow flakes. That's a skill in and of itself. I tend to make it smooth, and my flakes are like this. They're flat and wide. But another technique is to run long, narrow flakes that follow ridges instead of following thick spots. I tend to like bold flaking that follows the thick spot, because all it needs is convexity and a thick bump, and it'll go there. It usually fans out and gets wide when I do it that way. But I've got to be able to do both types if I'm going to take myself seriously. See, that's what That's what my flakes tend to do. And I like them this way because I can clean off large areas and they become smooth. I like the bold, clean look rather than the look of narrow flakes. Yeah. So I'm already sending in flakes when I probably shouldn't. I should probably just focus on regularizing because it's going to get thin. It's going to get really thin if I continue to do that before I'm able to skin that off. So I can't make it too thin. I got to leave myself room to skin off the other side. Okay, the abrader allows me to remove flakes as well on delicate material. I can use the abrader to remove flakes. And then I dull the edge. Now, does thinning the tip make the tip more susceptible to being popped off? It can, yes, if there's defects in the material. Yeah. Thinning the tip can be a weakness if it has inconsistencies in the material. A crack might open up. And since it's got very little bit of mass, that crack doesn't have to travel through much mass. And then the tip will pop off. But if you have consistent material, it's best to have a thin tip and a thin base to begin with before you start forcefully removing flakes from the center. Now I'm going over the basics because I know a lot of new guys are going to tune in to a Dacite knapping video. Yeah. I was just watching a channel earlier where he has a good idea. You know, he showed everyone his analytics and he said 70% of you are not subscribed, so if you like the channel, subscribe. I am in the same boat. 70% of you are not subscribed, the ones that watch. So yeah, subscribe. It's just one button click away. But you know, some of you don't subscribe because you don't want all these notifications. Well, you don't have to get notifications. I think actually the notifications are not that great for my channel. My channel's not promoted all that much. I'm just now seeing my videos near the top when you do a search for Flintknapping. Just recently, they started appearing near the top of the searches. For a long time, my videos were way down below. I think it has to do with regular posting. But some of the top channels that come up with Flintknapping are not channels that post regularly, so I really don't know. Okay, so there's just one little spot of original surface right there. It didn't want to give up. Oh well. I can get it later. Yep. If I can't get it with a flake, I'll just pick it off. Pick it. This snaps so easily. And I can make a mistake so easily that it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Yeah. And I don't want to install a curve either. Okay. I'm in danger of installing a curve up here. Yep. I just want it level. Looks pretty level except for this little spot up here. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to move the edge that way a little bit, all the way around, just by trimming. Downward strikes. Work on some symmetry. It's off a little bit. I need to take this side off. Take it down. And then take this down. Or I could take this off. But what's more advantageous for flaking? To take this side down, that way I can flake in this direction. So yeah, there's a bit of a strategy there. Come on. And yeah, I'm not really looking at the other side right now. There shouldn't be any steps. But I'll check and see. Yeah, it's not too bad. Basically, I'm beveling it so I can take flakes into that area. Or I can shoot flakes into that area. Yeah, the edge needs to be convex so it'll shoot properly. I know some of you slab nappers don't need that, but I'm not used to doing slabs. Some of you slab nappers can nap from a perfectly not convex, but just a flat surface. I need a convex start to my flakes so that they will travel. I don't know, it's going to be a little difficult to get the flakes to travel that far. I know I can get that far, it's dicey. If I make a mistake, it's hard to recover. If I make a step fracture in the middle and it's too thin, I won't be able to recover from that step fracture. And it'll have to stay. You know what I mean? Jelly bean. probably shooting flakes. I'll probably be shooting flakes from both sides. I need that option just in case one of these flakes ends in a step fracture. I need the other side for damage control. Yeah, see, a big bowl flake shaves off a lot of the surface. Don't have to worry too much. It would take, you know, 2 or 3 long narrow flakes to do that. And there's no guarantee that you can make each long narrow flake perfectly. The least number of flakes is the most desirable in terms of the odds. You know, the odds are you'll be more successful with the least number of flakes, because then you don't have to keep repeating the exact same proficiency with each flake over a long period of time. You do have to keep repeating your proficiency, but it doesn't require as many successful strikes, which is less fatiguing, and it also logically makes sense. So the only reason, I think, well, there might be 2 reasons for the regular long narrow flakes. One being aesthetics, the other being strength. You can create a strong point with a lot of these long narrow flakes because they tend to terminate near the middle, and you'll end up with a median ridge in many cases, which is a very strong feature in a flint knapped point. Yeah, I'm gonna have I probably will end up installing a slight curve. Let's see, unless I fix it. Okay. Yeah, I have to focus on this part because tips are the most difficult for me. I should probably spend a whole year just perfecting the technique of doing clean tips. There's got to be a way. I can develop a systematic way of producing a clean tip, it'd be so much easier than to have to damage control it every time. Why would it take me a year? Well, I'm just estimating that it might take me that long, because it took me that long to get it through my head that I need to not bite off more than I can chew with the step fractures. I'll probably have to take that much time to get it through my head to not mess up the tips. Yeah, before each critical hit, I gotta make sure the tool tip is well dressed. Yeah. Alright, here we go. Nice big bold flake. I need those nice big ones on both sides. Can you hear that wind? The wind is starting to pick up. Ooch, that hurt. I'm supposed to do that. That allows me to take that side down to continue flaking. Solves the problem of which side I'm going to take down. Yeah. I do need to leave myself the possibility of removing flakes from the other side too. That's not good. I don't know what it's trying to do there. It usually means there's incipient cracks. I'm getting Dacite flakes in my arms underneath. Hold on. See, I'm putting my elbows on the pant legs, and the pant legs are covered with flakes. My forearms and elbows are on my pant legs. All right. Yeah, see, there was some weird incipient stuff going on there. Okay. That's unfortunate because I'm going to lose length unless I make the base pointy. Now, is it possible to create incipient cracks with the abrader? Oh yeah, just by hitting too hard with the abrader can install incipient cracks and cause errors, yeah. But it's kind of rare. It's probably better to shape it with a pressure flaker than with an abrader, because the abrader does cause a lot of little steps. I can remove those pretty easily with indirect percussion, but as a matter of general rule of thumb, it's probably better to not do this and use a pressure flaker, except this just takes a lot less time. All right. Very, very hard hit, comparatively speaking. Let's see, did it go? Should have gone all the way. Let's see. Yeah, that's not too bad right there. If you see my videos, those little bridges are pretty common. They're pretty common. All right. And then one last little area. Yeah, I need to make it a little more narrow. Okay. A little more narrow before I tackle that one. Before I tackle this one. The edge is a little wonky, but that can be straightened out. I want to get the surface off first. It's always dicey. Always dicey. Okay. The only good way in is this way here, it looks like. I mean, I could do this way, but that's going to require some luck. From this side is easier. I could also do it from this angle, but I had to change the ridges. This is already a ridge going into the area. I don't know, there's not much meat there. Let's see. I'm just improving the edge contours a little bit. Oops. I'm looking to see what else I can do. The other stuff that I'm going to do is going to make it more narrow, so you never know when I'll have a good opportunity to get that. Maybe from this side, because I need to get rid of some mass over here. That was not good. All right. See, that was not good because now I installed an incipient crack. See that one right there? So yeah, it's the typical trying to thin a thin piece. It's not that difficult with this though, as it is with some other materials. You just have to be careful not to thin it too much. I can get that from the other side. Yep. So yeah, it's going to become more narrow on this side. It gets me closer to that spot. I'll worry about this step fracture later. It looks a little bit straighter. Yeah, I'm hitting a wall, but I can probably clean it off. I'm gambling that I'll be able to clean all those off in a little bit. Right now I'm just focused on trying to get closer to this. I probably should be a little more careful about how I get closer to that. I need good convexity all the way to that. This is not a very good option on this side because that lump in front. Yeah. But that is an option. The best option is from this side, either from up here or right there. But now I got two options. I can come in from either side. That's what you want. With something that's really thin, you have to have a plan B and a plan C or D, whatever. The more plans you have to get something damage controlled, the better. Yeah, I gotta be careful, very, very careful, that I don't ruin my opportunities to come back and get those step fractures later. Still don't like it. All right. Even though it's really, really narrow, I still don't like the pathway yet because I only have one or two chances to do it. One or two opportunities, that's it. Edge needs to be very regular. Yes, I don't like it. I'm going to try this way first. Alright, did it do it? Yes, it did. It almost went too far. See that? Alright. But I think I can repair all those. They're close enough to the edge, and I've got enough meat here I can do that. Alright, so I feel better. That's it for that side. Now I need to send in flakes to take care of those, and then send a couple in to take care of that one. Not that it matters to the function of the point, just the aesthetics is what matters. Alright. And I want to be very careful about doing it. I don't want to install step fractures trying to get rid of some. So what I was talking about earlier is it's better to pressure flake the edge to prepare it for strikes than it is to hit it with an abrader. This creates less shattering of the edge. I'll abrade it here in a minute. One of the reasons why it tends to dive like that is because I'm hitting way below center line. Just so I can make sure I get a long flake, I hit below center line, but the danger of that is that it will dive. If you're hitting below center line, there is a danger of diving flakes. And if you're very much below center line, you can pretty much guarantee that there'll be at least a little bit of diving. So that one flake took care of 90% of that. I still have another opportunity to clean it a little bit better. As long as I don't crack it. Look at that. That looks pretty bad. See that? I got some cracks in there. Alright. Those incipient cracks. That's what happens when you try to thin a thin piece. I did not install any step fractures trying to get rid of step fractures, but I did install a couple of incipient cracks. So I'm going to change the shape of my indirect percussion flakers soon. I think the rounded tip is contributing to those incipient cracks. I need to flatten the tip. Yeah. And the radial cracks too. I think the rounded tip is doing that. Yeah. I lost a lot of width. Or I'm going to lose a lot more dealing with that crack there. Dang it. Yeah. And that was a good striking area too. Shouldn't have done that. I think I hit too high up on the striking area. Okay. All right, just make it more narrow. That's all I can do. Come on. Yeah, that's really wonky in the middle there. Okay. Just gotta remember not to try to thin it down so much next time, but there is no next time. Well, I do have two little ones. It's just too thin for what I want to do. Come on now. Yeah, so it's too thin for what I want to do, right? These big bold flakes. So next time, if I want big bold flakes, I got to make it thicker. Well, that's not good. Dang it. It's getting too thin for what I want to do. Which makes me think it could have just gone that narrow from the beginning and just send in flakes later instead of having to creep in from a wide piece all the way down to this and end up with something really flakery. Just go to town on all the edges and then flake across something more narrow and thick to begin with. Because I've been creeping in on this thing for a long time, and I'm getting too much flakery. Too much flakery stuff on the surface. Every flake makes it thinner and thinner and more delicate. And more risk of overshot and all kinds of stuff. It's getting narrow enough to risk overshot. That's one thing about getting it narrow in the beginning. You know, I could have narrowed it way down in the beginning and then shot flakes across, but the more narrow it is, the greater the chance of overshot. So not only is it easier to flake, it's also easier to overshoot. Yeah, any of these flakes could easily overshoot and ruin it, and ruin everything. Come on. What are you doing? It's acting weird down here. It's probably in that same spot as before. Yeah, it either wants to go far or nowhere. Five and a half. All right, let's see. Let's see. It's got 15.8 by 6 or 7. 7. It's almost 8 to 1. Eight times 7, 56, right? $7 mm thick. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to just sharpen the edges. Okay, so that was not nerve-wracking. Nope, not a bit. I think it was okay to just whittle it down from a wide point. Even though it was nerve-wracking, I think that was the best strategy. If I had made it really, really narrow, one thing I wouldn't have is a lot of these good flakes, because I would just be chopping on the edges. You know, to make it narrow, you just chop the edges and you get little bitty flakes, little bitty thick flakes. You know, like this kind of stuff. If you just chop on the edges, but if you're slowly skinning as you get more narrow, you can get these longer and more useful flakes. So there's that. All right, hold up. I normally don't like to flick those flakes when the camera is on, because the camera is on the tarp or on the cloth. I could flip over the tripod. Okay, but it worked. All right. Let's get it finished up. Yeah, it's just a blade. Just a blade. I do tend to like my steel for the edges. Okay, it's not really cooperating. Starting to get cut. Oh, I can feel it. When I get a large blade, I tend to hit the edges with my knuckle as I'm sharpening. Yeah, there's incipient cracks everywhere. Yeah, on big blades, there's just so many areas to pick compared to a smaller blade. This stage takes forever. It takes forever on a large blade because there's just so much surface area, so much edge. And if you're really persnickety about it, it'll take you a long time because you'll be going over every millimeter to try to get it just right. And there's a lot of millimeters around that circumference or that perimeter. Dang it, I broke the tip off. The very tip. Dang it. I can't see. And the light's right there. I can't move the light to any better advantageous position. It's just right there. That camera, it's driving me nuts. Okay, I got it to where I'm satisfied with the tip. All right. Trying the copper again because the edges are very thin and the steel's not really needed because I don't need to remove any big flakes anymore. I don't know. Can't see. Yeah. There's that area with the incipient cracks. Okay. One of the hardest things to do is sharpen obsidian or dacite. And make it look straight. I'm taking way too much off that edge, but I'm going to need to still not into that incipient crack. I still need to see if I can get rid of it. By trimming the edge down and get in there. In hindsight, I don't know what I could do. Yeah. Other than just grind the heck out of the edges, start with a really, really thick ground edge. But I hate doing that. I don't like working off a really thick ground edge on a large piece because it takes so long to do this process. Come on. And then you get that kind of stuff. All right, so I'm going to quit here. I think I'm going to sharpen this off camera. I got to go pick up my son from work anyway. He's called me like 3 times already. All right, so good enough. It's all wonky now because I tried to get close to that incipient crack, but then I ended up thickening the edge too much, and now I gotta thin it back down. It's getting me so frustrated that I am going to have to do this off camera, the rest of it. Okay? So that's it. Off camera, I can I don't have to worry about gloves. I don't have to worry about gloves interfering with my ability to touch the camera to get it into focus. I can move the light in as many times as I want. I can get up and stretch. I can answer the phone. So that's it. Alrighty, there it is. It's very, very nice material. I like it a lot. It takes way too much time to do a big blade like this on camera. Okay, it's gonna be another 30 minutes before I finish this because of the way I want to sharpen it. I'll just do it off camera. All right, that's it.